Hey, you're good.
All right, thank you and welcome everyone. My name is Mayor Mike Peterson. This is the City of Cottonwood Heights. It is our work session for Tuesday, October 5th, 2021 at just after 5 p.m. To our council members and staff, we have an agenda in front of you, and we have a lot to cover because we actually have 3 meetings tonight. So let me begin by first welcoming those who are virtual and joining us, as well as those in person. I think Councilor Michael, can you hear us all right? No?
I can. Yep.
Yes. All right, just want to make sure you're connected with us. Thanks. So reviewing our agenda at 6:15, so we'll adjourn our work session at 6:10 and convene a community development and renewal agency business meeting. And there we'll have a report on our CDRA Economic Development Director will give us a November 1st report, and we'll consider a resolution adopting the annual report, and we'll consider amendment to the Canyon Star Development Agreement. You want to say anything about that now, or just do it then?
It's up to you. If you want to do it now, we can, or.
Everybody understand the agenda for our CDRA meeting? Any questions?
I haven't looked at it, but I expect we'll catch up.
All right. Anyway, we'll take the time necessary to make sure we go through that prior to any action, but it does have a request from the developer in that. Then we have our business meeting agenda, where we will have a public hearing on the proposed budget amendments. You want to walk through that quickly? Most of it, I think we're aware of, or if not all of it, we should be aware of.
Yeah, we've talked about it the last 2 meetings and had substantial discussion. The amendment includes a number of ARPA from the federal government funding regarding COVID.
ARPA is American Recovery, what is it?
American Recovery Plan Act.
American Recovery Plan Act.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so a number of items related to receiving the revenue amount of $2 million. And then we have a number of projects, including personal protective equipment, single audit costs, small business economic assistance program, which we will bring back to you. Utah League of Cities and Town technical support, badge and automatic door system upgrades, recreation service area reimbursements, UFA incident management team, a small funding amount included in there. And then beyond the ARPA, we're requesting some funding for reimbursements to Wasatch Front Waste and Recycling related to the ARPA request, a community survey that we'd like to do in fiscal year 2022 or next year, early next year, transfer to capital improvement funds for open space funding, which we've talked about, and then wages, police wage market adjustment, which we've had substantial discussion. The revenue amounts include primarily the ARPA funding and then some funding on rebudgeting for capital improvement funds. And there's a number of other things that we'll highlight more in there, but that's the main thing. It's nothing different from what we've talked about the last couple of weeks.
And Scott, can you tell me, and maybe I'll ask again in there, what the unobligated fund balance would be after these adjustments?
Let me see.
Still 4 something, 4 point.
So our spendable fund balance would be about 5.3 million.
5.3.
Yeah.
Okay, after these adjustments.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good to know. We'll make sure we turn over healthy budget when some of us leave. Yeah. All right. We have a public hearing on that. We'll take comments. We have 2 staff quarterly reports in the business meeting, one a police report, and we'll have someone new presenting that report. I take it we'll have Sergeant Dan Mozaleski,
Yes,
right?
you will.
Okay. See if we can make him nervous. That'll be fun. Then we have a public works report from Matt Ship. Here he comes right now. He's probably been in there tracking the Yankees to see how they do against Boston tonight.
Starts at 6, right?
Oh, okay. Go Yankees.
Yes, sir.
All right. Then we have some action items. 6.1 is approving or not approving the 2021-2022 budget amendment as a result of last week's discussion and after hearing the public comments for the public hearing. And item 6.2, consenting to the appointment to our Parks, Trails, and Open Space Committee of Larry Alcerta. I think we received a resume from him this afternoon. You want to say anything more about that?
Had a great resume.
Yeah, water, a lot of water conservation things, and I like to see when the last thing he had on his resume that he's a marathoner, so he must be a good guy. Those of us who have survived those. Item 6.3 is a resolution authorizing issuance of cells, a cell of not more than 14.5 the aggregate principal amount of sales tax revenue bond series. This is the refund issue, right?
Correct.
We talked about. And we'd asked our representative to lock in the rate. The rates went up slightly, so the savings rather than the low 80s, it's probably in the mid higher 70,000 savings per year, but still a savings. And the good thing about it is that we get the savings, and if we ever have another opportunity, there's no restrictions, we can do it again if we feel or the future council feels that's necessary.
Yeah, and Mayor,
Go ahead.
Mark Anderson will be here representing Zions that's helping us with this. If there are questions, he'll be here at the 7 o'clock meeting.
Yeah, I think it's pretty straightforward, but that's good. Item 6.4 is resolution approving and ratifying a bid and awarding a construction contract for the Ferguson Park, since that was the name we chose, landscaping project. I understand that actually came in slightly under bid.
Slightly underbid, yes, sir. So we are
Certainly
excited.
there's no change orders, but
That's fingers crossed.
yeah, but that'll happen. So that's good news. So hopefully we can get that moving. I know we have a contract with Salt Lake County to make that happen this year. So I think it shows we're on target for that. Then we have consent calendar. Any questions on the CDRA meeting or our business meeting later? Hearing none, you'll have additional opportunities later to deal with that too. But so it gives us about 1 hour to go through our work session item. Nothing too heavy, but some important discussions. First item is that we've asked him to lead a discussion on the city's COVID-19 safety measures, kind of where we are, how things look. They share with us anything from the Salt Lake County Public Health Department and signage in the building, et cetera, et cetera. So I'll turn it over to you, Tim.
Yeah, this, I put together a memo that's in your packet. Councilmember Michael had requested that this item be discussed, particularly related to masks and the council meetings. And so I provided information from CDC. They indicate a number of different elements, but the last bullet point in my memo talks about it, even if you're fully vaccinated, to maximize protection against the Delta variant, prevent possible spreading to others. They suggest wearing a mask indoors and in public if you're in an area of high substantial transmission rate, and we are at this point at this time. We've also looked at the Salt Lake County Health Department just on their website. I've had some conversations with them as well. They still are requiring that those that are not requiring that, but they're requesting that those that are vaccinated to wear masks indoors. or outdoors not vaccinated, wear masks indoors or outdoors. Salt Lake County also requires that if you're going into their building facilities, that they're requiring masks as well. We looked at other entities. There's a lot of cities that are not requiring, but requesting individuals to wear masks when they come into their facilities. We have one, Salt Lake City still is not meeting in person for their council meetings, and they require that individuals coming into the building wear masks as well. We do have signage, and what we have in place right now, and we've had signage in place for a number of months, that indicates that if you're not vaccinated, that we strongly encourage people to wear masks. And also indoors, we encourage people to wear masks as well. But it's not a requirement, it's a request that we have if you're not vaccinated, and we've had that in place for quite some time. So that's kind of where we are at this point. I have a number of other cities that we've talked to about what they're doing, fairly similar items as us, even regarding city council meetings. There's not a hard requirement for individuals to wear masks as they come into the meetings, but it's encouraged, which is what we're doing. So unless there's questions, that's kind of the basic information I'm providing, and thought it would be good to have a discussion. That's something.
Am I allowed to ask if people are vaccinated or not?
Well,
Shane?
I don't think so.
yeah,
Huh?
I don't think so. I think that's a HIPAA issue.
Yeah.
yeah.
Can people like in this table volunteer that information? I
I
mean,
think anybody.
I think my question is, my first part is, I want people around this table to feel comfortable. My assumption is that around this table is vaccinated. If not, I would assume they would be wearing a mask. And that's my first priority. The other thing is the protection of our employees. I really appreciate our administrative areas having the barrier up now, which I think we didn't have initially, but I think that's thing. And actually, I think I saw new signage this week on our front doors that are bigger, more pronounced, that strongly encourages masks. I understand the last data, though our numbers are higher than maybe we were a year ago, but that's where we are not meeting there, but they're starting to turn. So I'm comfortable personally with this group using our judgment. The other thing that's important, and I talked to several of the mayors, is that we always have the opportunity for anyone who feels uncomfortable to be on virtually. But I'm open to whatever the council feels. Yeah.
I'd like to have that conversation, Mayor, but I would also like your input after that conversation on our events, just
Yeah.
as we move forward. And I'm willing to talk about that in a minute, but I'd like to have this.
Well, that's a good point, is that we also want to look at proposed events where we have gatherings. I know we postponed our film festival because that's a large gathering. We also want to talk about, last year, I know we did not have our Christmas social because of COVID. So we want to talk about, we want to have that. I know that we have Monster Mash, which is more open out, but that's at the rec center. I think let them determine if they want to allow that or not, I guess. We'll just
Yeah, and what they've indicated is that they're just going to have a skate night. It's not
not
going
have
to be,
the carnival,
yeah, so it's a skate night. We're also
trunk or
still
treat.
tentatively planning the trunk or treat. It's outdoors, and there's quite a bit of social distancing in between the vehicles. And there's a lot of movement around with individuals and children, but wanted your input on all these things.
I think your ask is very reasonable. There should be a level of respect. This is a matter of life and death. So if someone is in this room or at this table that could jeopardize your health or any one of our health, I think respect would mandate that they Zoom. Several weeks ago, we walked into the council chamber and there were a lot of youth in there, children clearly under the age of being able to be vaccinated. So Christine and I both, mom instinct, I think, we immediately put our masks on. And then Steve something showed up to reprimand us and say it was a staged moment that we were, do you remember that comment?
Yeah.
I think it's just a matter of respect. If you know you're in the vicinity of someone who is not vaccinated or able to be vaccinated, a mask is a sign of respect.
No, I think it's proven masks, especially if both people wear them, are extremely effective. And obviously, the CDC and all of our local health officials are strongly encouraging them, especially if we don't have vaccinations. I have both vaccinations plus my booster, and I gladly, proudly say that's my position on it. But as Tally said, I really encourage us all to be sensitive to those around us, if not ourselves. So, but more comments, thoughts, concerns, and our team's very sensitive. I noticed additional hand sanitizers throughout the building, and I think we're doing a good job. But Christine, this is kind of your thing, so I don't mean to take away your thunder.
No, thank you. Well, I think the discussion came from as I was, I guess, marketing the film festival, if you will. One of my friends asked if masks were going to be required, and that's when I said, "Tim, are masks required?" That's really what led to the discussion. And then I reached out to Mark Shaw, who is a member of our community, an ER physician, and also on the governor's COVID task force and emergency planner for IHC. And what he said to me is, Christine, we can't even find beds for people that need to transfer from Gunnison, Utah to our IHC main hospital. And he said that we're not having meetings in person anymore. So these are the people that are helping us when we get sick and going to their facilities are not meeting in person. And so I guess I struggle a little bit. I think it might make some people uncomfortable if they aren't vaccinated and not wearing a mask. If maybe in council meetings, we just start wearing masks so nobody has to feel uncomfortable if they didn't get vaccinated for whatever reason it is they choose to. That's one idea. But I hate to require it, but if Salt Lake City, which is, has the health department, is requiring people to wear masks in their building, I tend to think that maybe we should. The data is suggesting that things are as bad as they were a year ago when we were not meeting in person. And those numbers are supposed to go down a little bit in October, November, and December. So I don't think that a little bit of caution for a couple of months, if we were to require them, I don't think that would be terrible if it's time limited. But I also respect that not everybody agrees with my opinion. But as I shared maybe with Tim, I don't know if everyone saw it, but the Canyon School District, if they could have, they would have mandated masks at the high school. But because of the state legislature, could not. And my daughter chose to wear a mask when she saw that email and was one of very few people to wear a mask because of how she wore it the one day. And then the next day she said, "Mom, I just feel ostracized by wearing this mask." And so chose not to wear it the next day. And I feel like we're in this space where we all want to pretend like everything's normal again, and it's not. And yeah, it looks funny when you're the only one wearing a mask, but I don't know. We're a city and we're leaders, and sometimes we have to lead in uncomfortable situations. And this may be uncomfortable to all of us, but I think it's important that we try to lead where we can.
Comments? Others? Position?
Yeah, I've been operating on the assumption that everyone in my immediate vicinity here is vaccinated. And I don't really know that. So with that air of uncertainty, it's been a year this month. That's my best friend died of COVID. So it gets very real when someone you loved dies.
So is there, how do others feel? Scott, Tim? Scott, Doug?
You're now the city manager and you're,
Yeah.
no.
I feel that I think most everybody I know has been vaccinated in this room. I don't think we should have to declare it, but I think that we're all pretty aware that it is definitely a deterrent. And we've all been touched by those that have passed away, I'm sure, in either directly or indirectly. But I think we try to distance to a certain amount and do all the things we can do. But Scott, what do you think?
I probably lean towards the, I like the signage that we have up. Our last meeting where we had so many people show up. I mean, one of the things that I did at the beginning of the meeting is I went and made sure we opened the doors. I checked to see if we could get the audio, put into the lobby and into the room so that if there was anybody that was present that felt like they needed to be further away or more socially distanced than what was available in the council chambers, that was still perfectly okay, because that's a choice everybody should be able to. Nobody should have to feel uncomfortable one way or the other with coming to our meeting. Mayor, your point was also well taken, that we do have the option, and we did that last meeting where we had people that were commenting both in person, and then there were those that we were able to get on Zoom as well. It's really too bad that it is such a politically charged item, but I have gone back to primarily wearing mine, even though most of the signs that I see say that if I'm vaccinated, I'm welcome to not. Just as a, just kind of that's a personal choice to do that and show that, that I think that's perfectly okay. It also does make it somewhat a little bit easier with the 7-year-old who cannot be vaccinated to say, well, mom and dad don't have to, but you do. So, but that's really a secondary item.
Well, to me, it's not a political issue. It's a public safety issue and a health issue. And I think the good thing about now compared to a year or so ago is that the number of vaccinations have statistically made a difference. And I feel much more safe now in this meeting than I would have a year ago. Again, I have a compromised immune system, so like Scott, I wear my mask whenever I go outside of or into areas where I'm not knowing that people are vaccinated. I'm comfortable in City Hall because I see the efforts every day, and I'm here many days. I don't think I'm ready to mandate it in the city or in City Hall. I think it's strongly encouraged, and we monitor it week to week and prepare to adjust. But I don't want to take away at all of the importance of not just the vaccination, but being sensitive to those around us, as Tally mentioned. So that's kind of my position, and I've actually always appreciated Christine's keeping that on the forefront, because I'm one who would have supported mandating masks in elementary schools without question because of the lack of vaccination. There's no question I would have supported that. Here in City Hall, with what I know, and I know we get reports from UFA because they actually do track the percentage of people who are vaccinated, and it keeps getting higher and higher. And I think, I'm not asking people, but I understand anecdotally that those who are in this room are most likely all vaccinated. So I'm comfortable with this level of making that mass something that you choose to do. And I appreciate the idea of strongly encouraging anyone who comes in the building to wear a mask, but not mandated. A little bit concerned about enforcement as well. And with that, and with the current recommendation of CDC, I'm okay with what Tim's outlined personally.
I might ask one question. I don't think I got a response to my email, and I don't think I'm gonna brazenly say what department it was, but some of our departments have not. I think one of our departments is almost or is 100% fully vaccinated, and the other two are not. Are we ensuring that when those employees interact with the public, those who are unvaccinated are wearing masks? What is our policy on that? Because even if you're working outside, people are getting the Delta variant being outside. So
And people are getting it even though they're vaccinated too. Yeah. So
correct. So this is a layer upon a layer, but for those that are not vaccinated, who are our employees, what are we doing so that we're not impacting those decisions on our residents?
Yeah, so to answer that, one of the struggles is with the HIPAA regulations. We can't go and request and ask which ones are or not. We do have general numbers, but with those that are not, we are strongly encouraging that they do wear masks. That's been in place for months and months since the vaccines have come out. But the problem is we can't go and identify exactly who is and who isn't, and that's the challenge.
Can't we require it as an employer? A lot of employers are requiring it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's being debated a lot right now. We have not required it at this point. It's something that we will evaluate, but we haven't done that at this point. We're trying to encourage, we're even working right now with our insurance provider and think that there might be some incentive options to get those that aren't vaccinated as well. And that's something we're looking at. We've even been talking about that today.
Would that be a legislative decision,
As far as what?
The council.
mandating it? Would we-
I believe it'd be more of an administrative decision on that. I'd have to think that through a little bit
What
more.
do you think, Shane?
I think it would be an administrative decision.
But I think as a council, we can take a strong position because I know, Riley, you can tell me, but in UFA, we know who's vaccinated, who isn't.
We do. Yeah, we've made it a kind of a matter of public safety too, because it allows us to protect the public and protect our employees and continue to provide a service. And we do mandate masks for anybody who's not vaccinated. And we have different levels of mask requirements depending on what we do, even if you're vaccinated or not. But we have a list. The list is protected, but that just helps us with the accountability piece, because that is the most challenging part. So, but we've chosen not to mandate it. We've been looking at a lot of different departments and cities and how they've done it. We actually have a 90%.
Vaccination rate.
So we figured it's not worth the pain to get the other 10, even though there's a lot of strong reason to. It's just looking at all the different things we have going on organizationally. We felt like that was a place that we didn't feel was necessary to go that far.
Does UFA then mandate if you're not vaccinated to wear a mask
Yes.
when in the public?
Yes,
See,
or in the station if you're around
Yeah.
others.
And I think that is something that I would encourage administratively to look at. I think that's good policy personally. But
So should we implement, I mean, could we implement a mandate if the department isn't fully vaccinated, that everybody wears a mask? Was that an incentive? Then maybe people would, in the same department, would encourage each other and work together. I don't know, maybe that's negative, but I was discouraged when I saw those numbers that you sent, Tim, where we're at. A little bit discouraged.
We're a little over, we estimate a little over 70% that are throughout the city of employees that are.
When I look at the department numbers, not overall.
May I, Mayor?
some departments are greater than others, all right?
Mhm. Yeah.
So I would think what I'm hearing, we need to move ahead, is from the council's recommendation is that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm thinking, looking at the clock, is that we stay with this group, assuming people vaccinated, and masks are not mandated unless you are not vaccinated or you feel there's a compromise, but encourage the city manager to look at departments, and where we have departments that has a number of unvaccinated, that we look at requiring them to wear masks if they're not vaccinated, unless, I don't know if they're working outdoors, if that'd be the same, at least evaluate that.
But yeah, if UFA is doing what I understood Riley was saying that they are, that may be a model to look at.
To at least look at and get some information.
And follow up if it makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, I expected if I was interacting with EMTs that came to the house, or I was interacting because not that I would ever drive too fast, but an officer came up to my window that I would expect them to be wearing a mask either way. But
Yeah.
I mean, there may be some justifications what UFA's done that go over to some of our employees that work outside with the public. That's certainly worth looking at.
So Robbie, when they go up to a car, is an officer wearing a mask?
No, not currently. When we initially offered the vaccinations, we know a ballpark of, well, not a ballpark, we know exactly what percentage it chose to accept the vaccination and which had not at that time. Although that's been a year, so we don't know who's chosen to do it since then and who has not. And it becomes a little dangerous for me to try to identify those people who exercise what they believe is their right not to get vaccinated and identify them and impose a mask mandate upon them. I understand the argument, it's a valid argument. It's just from a practical perspective, it is.
Well, both like fire and police are both public safety, and public is, I mean, I would just think there should be some logic behind or some justification to be able to identify to a degree that you can look at that. And I guess administratively, that's what I would say, is to look at that with what fire's doing, work with you and identify so that we can be sensitive to our public from a health safety point of view.
To think that an officer would approach your window and you're required to have that window down with a close interaction and that they could potentially be exposing you to a deadly pandemic is unacceptable.
Well, it's definitely a question to understand. And I don't know, so if there's legal things or why one and not the other,
We'll evaluate it. Like I
Okay.
say, from an administrative perspective, I'll give you a report on that.
Okay.
In the council communication, so.
all right. We move ahead.
Thank you, Mayor, for including that on the
Yeah.
agenda.
Thank you. Item 2 is transportation plan review, Matt Ship.
Yeah, real quick, Mayor and Council, I know we're got time here. This is just something I wanted to bring back to you, just bring you up to date on what's going on. I kind of tried to lay out a little timeline on the transportation master plan. We really got this thing started when, going back to what was just previously discussed, COVID, a lot of things going on, meetings here, meetings there, canceled, Zoom, trying to do this master plan is taking a little bit of time. We have a product that we are reviewing now as a staff, both community development, community and economic development is reviewing it, public works and engineering is reviewing it, making comments, and we will be trying to finalize that in this next month and bringing some information back to the city council to review and make comments on for this transportation master plan so we can get it to the public. And then at some point, we need to bring it back to the city council for adoption. And just as a reminder, the transportation master plan, it is a document that we use as staff for not only ourselves, but also to work with developers and property owners as properties develop. It helps us and the developers know the amount of property that we're talking about, road widths, bicycle lanes, sidewalks, and things of those types of infrastructure that we would like to see in our city as they develop. That's both for new development, redevelopment. It also has traffic calming information. It has a myriad of things in there. So, and the plan itself is actually a new way that master plans are moving forward is this will be an online document that you can go in and interact with as a resident or a developer or the city. You can go in and interact with this map and get more information as it goes through, as you start to research developing in the city or doing some things. So just wanted to give you an update. It's been a while and we haven't brought it forward in quite a bit, but like I said, things are happening. We're going through a final review. Like I said, it'll take us about a month to get through that, but we'll be bringing some information back to you. So in a nutshell, that's where we are. If you have any questions, happy to answer them. I don't have anything to give you right now to review. It's just an update.
Well, just as far as timing, so it's Horrocks Engineers that's doing the master plan, right?
Correct.
And it's close to being complete.
Correct.
So will it have a public hearing on it? or-
There will be a public hearing.
Okay.
The master plan needs to be adopted. So as a council,
No, so-
you
so
will,
Before we adopt it, we'll have a public. hearing.
yes, that is correct. There will be a public hearing and it'll come back to review public comments as
Oh,
a
yeah.
council, and then we
It says it
will
right there.
move forward with and scheduling an adoption for that.
Yeah, and it's the draft plan.
Yeah,
is
the
what
draft
will be-
plan you'll be reviewing.
Will be ready.
Good.
We're just, like I said, making some final adjustments, cleaning it up a little bit and trying to coordinate everybody's schedule and time.
So will that be presented to the council this year?
We're going to try to present something to the council this year, but we'll also, I would probably suggest it is going to be, the adoption is going to be pushed off into the new year and
Okay.
with a new council. So
Is that it?
we're working on the timing. That's really what it is. I know that we'll have 3 new bodies on a mayor and at least 2 new council members. So there'll be an educational element to that. So we really need to work with the timing.
Well, we'll work to get a good draft for them.
Yes, correct.
Okay. All right, thank you. Any questions, comments of Matt? Short-term rental amendment. Mike Johnson.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. We discussed short-term rentals earlier this summer. Challenges with enforcement. I know there was a problematic rental unit in District 4 that created quite a bit of public interest in seeing how the city could improve its enforcement and ordinance and other things. We've explained previously that some of the challenges and roadblocks with enforcement and the citation process and getting legitimate or substantial penalties enforced on these. But one aspect that we have full control of is the city's ordinance. I'm going to share that with you. We've taken this to Planning Commission and gotten a positive recommendation. So now the ordinance portion of this effort is now ready for council consideration.
You're gonna have to look over here. For some reason, our equipment's not working.
Oh, sorry.
in this direction. So-
And you have it in your packet too, if you had a chance to look at it. There's just two. couple
Yep, the
major-
draft ordinance, the actual substance of the changes is not a ton, but we think it helps clarify. But so this is just kind of a summary. We have an ordinance right now that governs short-term rentals. And we actually allow short-term rentals, but in very limited areas. Mainly multifamily or commercial areas that allow some sort of residential use is where we currently allow short-term rentals. They have to be part of private developments served by private road systems and have at least 8 units within those private developments. The reality is we see 3 primary areas where we have a large majority of our legal short-term rentals: at the Canyon Racket Club condominiums, at the Oaks at Wasatch PUD project, and then at Canyon Place, which is by the High T intersection, also a condominium project. Those are not the ones we really have ever had any issues with. Those go through a conditional use process. They receive a business license and inspection. They are renewed annually, and we have very few issues with those. Where we have issues, as we've talked about before, is the illegal rentals in single-family residential areas, or even in R2A zones that are on public streets. So they're not allowed there. This code specifically says they're not allowed there. Anyways, so short-term rentals are specifically prohibited and illegal in single family zones. And that is where a majority of the issues we deal with are located, is in these illegal areas. A little more context here. State code defines short-term rental as fewer than 30 days and long-term is 30 or more. City ordinance currently says a short-term rental is between 3 and 30, long-term is 30 or more. And then when we talk about penalties and enforcement measures, we have two references right now in city code to penalties. One is in the short-term rental ordinance. It's if you receive a license for a short-term rental and violate the terms of that license may be revoked and can also be punishable per 1.08, which is a separate section of the ordinance, which says violations are punishable by imprisonment not to exceed 6 months or a fine in any sum less than $1,000. As we've talked about before, this is the citation process. So code enforcement gets called out, has to do the legwork to gather evidence and present the case in court. And what we've experienced many times is the penalty actually assessed by the judge is much less than the maximum possible. That's a little beyond the scope of this ordinance, but that's one of the constraints we continue to deal with. And then other enforcement limitations, just as a refresher as well. State code does not allow us to enforce solely based on website listings. So we are required to gather clear evidence of illegal short-term rentals. Sometimes that includes, witness statements, which is always a little awkward for neighbors.
And that's new this year. I'm sorry to interrupt you. But that is new for this year.
The website listing, I think it's a
2 years?
couple years. Yeah, 2018 or 19. Yeah. So what we see is enforcement is time consuming and resource intensive, and then often results in fines that are much less than the maximum. So again, issues that still persist and we're working on in other ways. But what we're focused on with this text amendment is updating and clarifying the short-term rental ordinance to make it as clear as possible. So we have revised, this was per planning commission recommendation, the definition of short-term rental to match state code. There, I guess, was some confusion with this before. The misconception was we define short-term rentals as between 3 and 30 days, and then elsewhere in the ordinance said rentals of less than 3 days are not allowed. But there was some confusion that people may see that as a loophole and misunderstand that short-term rentals less than 3 days were just unregulated and allowed. Again, that's not what the ordinance said, but to clarify and to make it consistent with state code, the commission recommended redefining a short-term rental as fewer than 30 consecutive days. And then we've added a few provisions that will help clarify the fact that short-term rentals are strictly prohibited in single-family residential neighborhoods. Any rental of more than 30 consecutive days.
Just
Yeah.
back one, so what about the R2s on public streets?
Yes, yeah, that's already in there. That's in the ordinance. It's all of this is already in the ordinance, but it is already clear that you have to be on a private street to have a
So that's-
short-term rental.
This isn't changing that.
No, this is reiterating because 99% of our issues are single-family homes. So that's why we added that provision for added emphasis. And then any rental of more than 30 consecutive days is not a sham designed to avoid classification. This is, again, tough to quantify and actually have teeth, but it, again, as a reminder that you can't sign a 30-day lease and then rent for 3 days of that 30 days, violate or eliminate that lease, cancel it, and then start a new one again. That has been the workaround that some people have reported of renters signing 30-day leases and then just ending the lease early. And then again, related to that, any rental of the same property for occupancy more than once in any 30-day period shall constitute a short-term rental. Again, trying to get around or head off the loopholes that we've heard people use. Again, these would be probably used more than anything as a case was presented to a judge to say, hey, it's really clear that you can't sign a long-term lease and then void that after 3 days. But again, added clarification we think is helpful. And then
Is that, I guess I could read that last piece. What happens if it's a 6-month lease? I mean, they could they should be able to re-rent that on a new long-term lease. Does it have to be two or does the one cover it? Am I making any sense?
This is probably language you got from somewhere that's been tried and true.
No, we proposed this to help avoid the issue. This is meant to say if you sign a 30-day lease, you can only rent to one family in that 30 days.
Do you understand what I'm saying is?
I guess if a lease ends in the middle of a month and another one starts.
Fine, that should be okay, and that could be within the 30 days. They don't have to have it vacant for 30 days before they lease it again. If it's a longer.
No, if it's a long-term lease and they're using it for that.
But if they were converting, for example, that's,
So Mike, just to
I
clarify.
assume Shane.
But this doesn't say in any month, it's any 30-day period.
So piggybacking is
Yeah,
what
I see
we're trying
what you're
to,
saying.
we're trying to not let them piggyback and say, well, I was here 3, they were there 3. So they get up to the 31 days. Is that taken care of with this?
Yeah, again, the goal here is to avoid the loophole that people are using, where you sign a long-term lease, void it after 2 days and sign another long-term lease to another family.
But enforcement's the big part of this, I guess.
Yeah. And that's been the problem with some of these in the past, is that exact thing.
And if I may just add, and Councilmember Michael had asked about this, earlier this summer, we talked to the Utah League of Cities and Towns about these concerns, especially with enforcement, hoping to try to move some different things forward. I know our lobbyist, Brian Allen, has met with some of the legislators about some of these challenges, because we have a lot of residents up here that have a lot of concerns about this. One of our representatives met with the Realtor Association, the statewide group. They weren't willing to support any changes allowing for the enforcement components through that has been changed by the legislature through looking at different advertising and things such as that. So it's going to be a continual process that we're going to be working with the league on, and hopefully we can get a little bit of traction somewhere, but they're very much aware of it. So our lobbyists and our legislators are becoming more aware of it.
Well, this is definitely an improvement, as we talked a few months ago, when we identified these weaknesses in our ordinance. But again, if we implement this, if we see again in the future another loophole, we can still come back and
Sure.
correct it
Amend it,
again.
huh?
So, yeah.
Yeah,
This Christine, who probably deals with it maybe more than anybody else.
Right, go ahead. Christine, are you there? Christine, we lost you.
How soon would this be, could this be enacted so that once we pass this, is there a grace period?
no, it's effective immediately after the council takes action.
Christine, are you there? All right, Michael, go ahead.
Yeah, the last thing was, we have the penalties that I read off in a previous slide in a different section of the code. We moved that to this section of the code.
These are
as well.
single family homes. We're following the zoning. We have the ADUs now. I mean, what else is there? We have an affordable housing problem. Everybody knows that affordable housing issues are a direct result of Airbnbs, right? If we're using our homes in single family for Airbnbs, that means that we don't have affordable housing for those who live and work here. And so as a city and as the league, this should be one of our big priorities, because we can point to this being a direct problem for affordable housing if we're allowing Airbnbs and have no enforcement. And it seems so obvious to me, and it's implausible to me that our state legislature has us wrapped up in this circular issue when it's very simple. Figure out the enforcement, make sure that single family homes are maintained as single family homes and not Airbnbs, and solve one of the issues as to why we have an affordable housing problem. I don't know what else to say. I think we should really be pushing this issue as strongly as we can.
No,
Maybe
well,
we're the only community that's affected by this, but I would imagine Park City
We're
is affected
definitely
in
not.
other resort towns near ski areas
yeah, the
or
whole,
near Zion's National Park or near Bryce, right? We can't possibly be the only community facing this issue.
No, I think we need to make this a priority with our legislative lobbyists, but I think the point of this ordinance is to correct a couple primary areas of deficiency we saw in the last review, which is the penalty and the language defining whether or not have a sham, as we call it, or manipulating the timing of the.
I get that. I get that. I'm not opposed to that, but it's not going to solve the problem. The problem is that our police can't enforce anything because you can't use the Airbnb website or VRBO website or whatever website is out there to show that these people are doing it.
Oh,
So
yeah,
that's great. I'm psyched. I'm thankful that our city staff is doing it. I'm just saying that sometimes as a city, we need to lead. And if we're not going to lead on masks, then maybe we can lead on this issue because it's a big one that affects. And if any of you are at your computers, type in Cottonwood Heights ski house and look at all the dots on the map that are in my district, and you'll see the problem. Ask Robbie knows about it. If we can't turn a blind eye to something that's affecting our community in such a way that then affects affordable housing, and then they ask us to put plans together on how are we going to meet the affordable housing goals. Well, how about you do this? How about you help us and give us the opportunity to enforce, and then we can help on the affordable housing issue as well. It has to be a community effort. That I don't yell, but it's like that's why we have our lobbyists. We need somebody to help us push.
And I don't know if you heard what I said. We are doing that. I mean, Brian Allen's been meeting with, even in the last couple of weeks, he's met with some of our legislators about this issue because it's a concern of ours, and it's something that we are moving forward and we are going to push because it is.
You just said that the Utah Real Estate Board said no, and what I heard from you is like, well, we tried, we're going to pass this, and we'll see how it goes for another year. That's what I heard, and that's what probably people who are also listening on the phone.
That's absolutely not what I said.
So then tell me exactly what we're doing. Show me the passion and the fire and how we as a city are going to lead here.
Okay.
Because I'm not hearing it. So I'm sorry. I'm on the phone, so it's hard.
No, again, what I'm hearing today is that we are giving direction to the city to make that a priority item on our legislative agenda going to the next legislature, that's a high priority concern of ours, not in just District 4. I know that there's some in District 3 and I have a couple of neighbors who knocked on my door. So I think it's through the whole city. I hear that loud and clear. So we're giving administrative direction to staff to make that an item for our next legislative retreat with our lobbyists. But then in the meantime, we need to tighten up our ordinance is what we'll do today and make that a stronger point to help mitigate some of those challenges, especially on the penalty side. But yes, I agree that it needs to be a high priority for us with our lobbyists, and that's what we're agreeing tonight.
Well, I guess I'll say this, and you probably know this, Mayor, and I'm assuming the other council members know this as well. If we don't get an amendment to the current piece of legislation today, this fall, and get a bill number, it doesn't matter what we do in January. It's too late. So Brian needs to start working on redlining whatever bill has been enacted today, so that we can start working it today over the next 3 months before the legislature starts. So if we can't wait till January, I guess that's why I'm saying this today and with some gusto here. It has to be done today. We need to start working on it today with a red line. So I guess I would propose, Tim, if Brian can pull the legislation and redline it and share that with us, let's get going on it now and get a bill numbered and find maybe it's Cullimore and Senator Reeby and our whole, Cottonwood Heights delegation to get up and going on a bill. That's what I would recommend.
Yeah, I didn't mean to imply that we wait till January. I mean you're right. That's a good clarification that we communicate to our lobbyists now and find out the best timing, whatever that is. And if you're saying it's immediately, and it's getting with Cullimore and Reeby and Galen Benny and all of them, let's find out where we can focus and have an impact. Yeah, it's fundamental. I agree.
But I want to say that we aren't just starting today or now. It was initiated and the conversations have been happening with our legislators since this past summer. So I don't think it should be stated that we are just starting now. We haven't been thinking about this, talking to the league about it, and also talking with our legislators about it. This has been a priority since this past summer, and we've been working on it. So we aren't just starting right now.
Yeah.
I agree, we can work towards getting some legislation and getting some redlining on it. We have to have legislators that will support that, and that's what we've been working on.
Has the league taken a position on it?
Not yet.
I mean, I know obviously the Realtor group or whoever it was, they've come in and opposed, and they're also a very strong lobby. That's why they got the bill passed in the first place.
But I think just as much as working with our lobbyists, I think we need through LPC, work through the league, because that's a pretty big lobby group right there. If all the other cities are having the same challenges. But let's get with our lobbyists, let's find out where things are and push it, because it's an issue. We've heard it for years about not being able, as Robbie shared, being able to use the web to track them
No,
down.
when they passed that, I personally thought that was a mistake.
Yeah.
That just took any chance we had of effective enforcement away.
All right, we hear, I think we understand the direction. Mike, any final comments? We gotta move.
Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval, so we plan to bring it back for a public hearing and potential action in 2 weeks.
Okay. All right, we have one more item. We have about 10 minutes, and then we need to adjourn to our CDRA meeting. Item D on staff reports, our Parks, Trails, and Open Space Committee project priority discussion. Understand we have the chairperson of that committee. Jen, are you with us?
Yeah, Matt, can you add Jennifer Shaw as a panelist?
Can you stop your share for a second?
Oh, yep, sorry.
So Jen will get you on as well, and Councilmember Michael is our liaison to this group, and staff is Mike Johnson. So we'll have a little priority discussion of some recommendations from that Parks, Trails, Open Space Committee.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Matt.
Welcome, Jen.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for taking the time to join us, and thank you for your service. That you're my favorite committee, but don't tell the other committees.
All right, if you insist.
So I think, Mayor, if it's okay, I'll give a quick background and then turn some time over to Jen and Councilmember Michael to kind of add and fill in anything that I miss here. But back in during the 2021-2022 budget adoption process, there was interest brought up in funding some parks, trails, and open space related city projects. And the council at the time recommended that the PTOS committee discuss this further, prioritize and recommend project ideas and bring those back to the council for consideration. So we have done that with the committee over the past several meetings this summer, and come up with kind of three projects of varying levels for consideration. And these are not presented in any hierarchical order. These are just the three that kind of rose to the top of projects. One was some landscaping work at Mount View Park on that hillside there to supplement the existing landscaping with pollinator landscaping species. There's been interest expressed at implementing pollinator gardens throughout the city somewhere. There's been recent state legislation on this issue as well. So one of the ideas there was to enhance the landscaping in that kind of hillside passive area with some pollinator friendly plant materials. That one would be a relatively small budget impact, given that the area is built out and kind of supports that already.
Yeah, it's a perfect area to do something like that. Yeah.
So that's one. This is an idea of, this is what a pollinator garden could mean. It's just flowers and landscaping that bees and other pollinator type species like to visit and use.
What other species?
Oh, don't put me on the spot here. Butterflies.
Well, I know there are other, but obviously the.
Bees and butterflies, I'll say that.
You took a safe.
Okay, project number 2, this one actually segues well with the Ferguson Park project. So this hasn't been perfectly defined or refined yet, but Ferguson trailhead upgrades. There'd be upgrades to that trailhead area, landscaping and some of the informational signage right at the trailhead. And again, this enhances and complements the Ferguson Park and trail parking project that's already underway. And what we mean there is this kind of area here, we could enhance that, landscape the hillside there, enhance the signage, just different enhancements to make this trailhead access location a little more visually appealing. That would require a partnership with Salt Lake County on that one, but we think they'd be supportive.
Are they talking about the little amphitheater in that area as well?
Yeah, so some of the signs up there,
Okay.
because it's not these signs necessarily, it's the
Yeah.
informational signs up there.
Right.
that could be-
Walking up to the amphitheater, there used to be some nice signage there. That's kind of, okay.
It really, I think the idea is to create more of a, a trail gateway here that's,
Yeah.
A little more enhanced.
I like that.
And then another project that was brought up and seemed pretty popular is hammock poles at a public park. There's not been a recommendation on a specific location yet, but this was recently implemented at Knudsen Park in Holiday.
Oh.
And we've heard from them that it's fairly popular. They're just poles that are installed in the ground at parks that people can attach hammocks to. It's kind of a passive park amenity, and it helps reduce damage to trees. Ben Hill said that's fairly common right now is people will hook hammocks up to trees that are close and break branches and cause issues there. So this is a way to address that. This is an idea. It can look a number of different ways, but this is kind of the concept that they're talking about here. These structures in the ground. So that's a quick overview of the 3, and there were dozens of ideas that the committee talked about and discussed and kind of landed on these ones. So we wanted to put those in front of the council for your information and review, and then get some direction on what to do next. If you'd like us to get more detailed budget information on these and bring that back, we certainly can do that. But maybe before that, I'll let Jen add her experience here.
Jen, any comments?
Yes, thanks, Mike. I appreciate that overview. I do have a few comments. On the pollinator garden, I agree that Mountain View Park is a perfect place to highlight the potential for parks to have more plants that support pollinator species. But I would encourage us to try and focus on those pollinator plants that are more adapted to our specific biome, are more drought tolerant and native, for example. And that project would include not only the addition of those plants that support the pollinators, but some educational signage too, is the idea. On the Ferguson Canyon project, we want to update the existing trailhead so that it creates sort of a seamless, coherent project between the lower trailhead and the upper trailhead. And we've also noticed that a lot of the rock mulch is wearing away. There's erosion on that hillside where the service area driving path is located. And as you mentioned, Mayor, the signage that is there is much of it is either gone or extremely faded. And so it's an opportunity to create more awareness and try to encourage folks to use that amphitheater for nature talks, such as the ones that we've been hosting as part of the Parks, Trail, and Open Space Committee, and would like to do more of once we can get through COVID. So, and then have signage that is similar to what we see in the lower area, again, and similar to the other wayfinding we might see throughout the city. Then the last item on hammocks, I just want to point out that those can be multi-use. Those types of infrastructure can be used not only just for hanging up hammocks, but also potentially for fixing slack lines. And for those of you who might not be familiar with what that is, it's essentially just creating, setting up webbing that's wide enough to walk on and taut enough to walk on, which is popular as well now too. So it's mixed use.
I'm glad you mentioned it. I was going to ask about that because that would be a natural with those posts, yeah. So my understanding is for the council's consideration is that we would ask the committee with staff to give us a little more information as to specifically what's you would like to see with a rough dollar amount. Then in January, as part of the next budget process, that can then be prioritized in with the budget. And, you know, and I think the level of support that we have from the community for our parks and open spaces, that these would get a favorable consideration. But I'd like to understand the cost of those and then make sure that they're looked at with all the other budget requests and then prioritized in. And so council feedback?
No, I was gonna suggest that thing, let's get a little more information so that certainly if there's a retreat, we can make sure that, yeah, that's something that we need to include in the budget.
Yeah, none of those are heavy lift items.
No, they're not.
And I think that's what's neat about them is they're not asking in this request to build a 3-acre park and, you know, rest of it somewhere on the active side or something. Yeah. So no, these are
May I
something.
jump-
that,
yeah. May I jump in here?
Absolutely.
This was, the Parks, Trails and Open Space Committee had made a request and it fell through. I will take the blame. I did not present their request to you during the last budget session. I did so at the very end. And at that time, I believe the council had said, as the Parks, Trails and Open Space Committee has thoughts to bring them to the council during the year, that we didn't need to wait for the next budget session. So I believe I'm nearly 99.9%. That was what the council said at that time. So this ask is for this calendar year with the proposed budget amendment, should the council agree, and I'm fully supportive of all three pending the full estimate of cost, but I don't think any three of them can be exorbitant depending on the size of the butterfly garden. So I just want to be very clear about that. My mistake, but I tried to rectify it. And you all were kind enough to say that we could bring these requests during the year. If I'm wrong, I'd love to hear it, but Mayor, I believe you might agree with that as well.
I have no problem considering it, but again, that's the caveat there is what are we talking? Because I know that signage issue at Ferguson could be 20,000 or it could be 200,000. So it depends what we want to do there, and also to get an idea of the pollination garden, just to know the amount before we can consider it. So
Yeah, I think, Mayor, the goal tonight was to present these ideas and make sure there weren't any major concerns with them. And then we can work with the committee now to prepare more defined project scopes and details and cost estimates and bring those back again at the council's direction.
but again,
I might invite you all to take a walk up to Ferguson Canyon and to see the state of affairs that exists there currently. I think you might all be surprised at the level of erosion and other issues with that trailhead.
yeah, it's what was shown on the picture, which is the access entry is not as inviting. The signage is really inconsistent. Some of the signage as you walk on the switchback going up to the amphitheater is basically destroyed. So I hear it loud and clear because I remember when it was new what it looked like. So, and I've seen it recently. So I think that's excellent suggestion, especially as we tied into what we're doing on Ferguson Park, which is the overflow, which will actually doing that at the same time. Maybe we could even do it as a change order to, I don't know, but I just need, for me, just knowing some numbers and what we're specifically talking about so we know what to even request as far as an allocation.
Well, I was the hammock poles. I know over at Knudsen Park, they're specifically in shaded areas. We may want to bring that up next week at CH2. And see, a couple of the other parks might be, see if some of their parks may be better locations that have more developed shade trees and some older ones that,
Well,
rather than sticking them out in the,
well, we have 3 parks that have passive areas that are ideal for something like this. That would be Golden Hills
Golden Hills would have some, yeah.
and near the pavilions, both at Anzac and Bywater, both have passive areas that those would fit very well in.
And that's what I mean,
But
but
I
those
would
are
love,
also,
we'd love the committee to tell us where they'd like to see them.
those 2 are district parks.
Yeah, 2 of them.
And so
Yeah.
that's why I suggested possibly bringing it up with,
I think as we
To
have
see if the
this
concept
contract
works.
for Ferguson Park, it's very timely that we get those.
Yeah, I
signs.
think the Ferguson one, tying that signage and the design and the continuity is a natural, because we saw some, I think Matt showed us some wayfinding and follow that same design and use it as we go up into the trailhead and stuff would be a natural. So I hear Christine's desire, of course, to try and move this rapidly. So let's send it back to staff and see how quickly you can bring something back.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry to cut us off. We've got 3 minutes to meet in the council chambers to conduct a CDRM meeting. Thank you for everybody's participation. I entertain a motion to adjourn and reconvene in the other meeting.
we adjourn our work session and reconvene in the other room for our CDRA meeting.
You have a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.